Hi again, students. All right, we are continuing to grind in imperialism. We just finished that up with 2 lectures. You watched that, and then we're getting here to World War One. This is going to be our intro day. I'll try to make it as brief as possible, but still communicate the content to you about how do we get involved in the greatest war to end all wars. That was supposed to be World War One. We had to rename it because we have World War Two, but it was originally called the Great War, and that was even before America was involved. And then after America got involved, it definitely became a world war. So the title kind of changed. Okay, so that's the subject of today's lecture, and it's going to be the first one of maybe 3 or maybe 4 lectures about World War One that is going to take us into the beginning of December. So grab your notes as you guys are in the habit of doing now, and thank you for watching asynchronously and always doing so well to connect and taking notes and trying to put some U.S. history in your head. And again, you got to be motivated on your own these days. And a lot of you are doing well, and hope that those of you are struggling are just reminding yourself, hey, I got to have more disciplined habits. I got to be doing this, spending my time more wisely. So, and I always reach out when you need help and we need assistance. I'm here for you. I want to help you uh, as much as I can. So, all right. And speaking about World War One, there's been some good new kind of movie pieces. If you are interested in watching, maybe you've heard of 1917. That movie came out last year. I think it does a very good job of depicting what World War One is like, and it was done by Hollywood, so they have all the bells and whistles in terms of production and action. So very well done movie, and that was done. I think that came out around November of last year. So very well done. I would connect with that. There's also War Horse that's now like 5 or 6 years old. That was well done as well, about a horse and its contribution really to fighting in World War One. If you remember, we're not necessarily in the fully industrial age yet. So there's not cars, there's not trucks that are widely used. At first, it was just horses still. We're dependent on a horse and cavalry and horse-drawn carriages to pull a lot of big equipment around. So, and then also there's a documentary called They Shall Not Grow Old. I don't know if you've seen Lord of the Rings, but Peter Jackson, the director of that and The Hobbit, put together a documentary because his grandparents served in World War One. And so it's a collection of old pictures and movies that he's spliced together, remastered, and then colorized. So it's really cool to see some actual real footage from World War One, which we have and it exists. But is now made more modern. So it's kind of easier to digest. So I would encourage you to check those out if you're interested in some deeper understanding of World War One. So I'm going to do my best through lecture today and through the next couple of weeks to try to get you the main points of World War One. And so what are the long-term causes that leads this world into a world war? And there's a couple of long-term causes that kind of affect America, not so much. It's mainly the European empires that start this war, and then America eventually gets dragged into it. We'll talk about that. But the number one long-term cause that gets this world into war is what's called nationalism, and that's having a pride in your homeland, a pride in the strength of your country and superiority, believing you are better than other countries. This is especially going to be damaging to Europe and lead them into this costly war, of which they had not seen a major war since the Napoleonic era, which is 100 years prior to this time period. And so, and when you're proud of your country, you want to display how strong your military is, how good your colonies are throughout the world. And so what this is going to do is create an atmosphere of competition and also contempt at the other countries because they are not as great as your country. Is going to help stoke the flames behind a world war. Also, the imperialistic nature of the world at the time. So the more sort of countries, territories, your reach that you can expand around the world, the stronger you are. And so that sort of time period for America that we just talked about, and as well as other countries of the world, sort of vying for economic, political, and cultural domination of the world is going to create this other atmosphere of competition that is happening in the contempt of other countries as well. Number 3, alliances are going to be set up that are going to try to help each country have friends and allies. okay, to protect themselves. So it's just like if you were here on campus and I saw you and we were going toe to toe, and you're like, oh, Messner, he's pretty weak. I could take him, but to make sure that I can get Messner, I'm going to bring my friends with me as well. And then seeing you coming down the street with you and your friends about to beat me up by myself, I'm going to get my friends too, my gang of friends, to come and get my back against you. So that's kind of what's going to also exist in the world, is the system of alliances, where it's two different groups or gangs that are essentially going to form in the world, and you're either on one side or the other side, right? And so when fighting does break out, they're all going to come to each other's aid, which is like these dominoes falling that eventually creates a world catastrophe and world war. So the two major allies in this time is what's called the Central Powers. And the big four are Germany and Austria-Hungary. These are two countries that are joined together, Austria-Hungary. And then Turkey is a third country, and then Bulgaria, a fourth country. And they're down here on this map in blue. So Germany, Austria-Hungary, tremendously huge land empire. When they lose World War I, it all gets broken up. Now there's a separate country of Austria, separate country of Hungary, and then a bunch of other Baltic countries over here. You can look at any modern map and you can see that. And then Bulgaria here, and then Turkey is a part of the Ottoman Empire, which is going to reach down in North Africa, be Palestine and Egypt. So tremendously large kingdom as well. And when they lose, they're going to have their territories carved up too. But they're going to go against the allies of France, Britain, Russia, Japan, and Italy, although Italy's kind of going to flip-flop both sides and eventually fall out before the world war's over. And then USA, I have an asterisk because they're going to join later. We're not there in 1914 when the initial battles start and rage through the Western Front here and then through the Eastern Front as well. But we are going to join forces and join in 1917. So 3 years after its start, and kind of be the savior to help rescue our allies. And we'll talk more about that. But number four, there's going to be this general sense of worldwide jealousy, and that countries wanted what others had, and thought that we could just go in and take it militarily, be like, oh, I'm going to slap you around and take what's yours. Again, just like the gang kind of warfare. So those jealous feelings are going to trigger feelings of insecurity, but also aggression. So insecurity, hey, I'm not that strong, so I'm going to bulk up my army, or I'm going to get friends, and then I feel really strong and like we can dominate you and take your stuff. Okay, and then my last sort of long-term causes, these three. There's number five is militarism. Each country also are building stronger and stronger militaries. With the Industrial Revolution, now we can mass produce guns, mass produce ships, mass produce new weapons and technologies that are being developed. So these countries that are making these new inventions, this new factory produced sort of military, want to show it off. And they're also spending millions of dollars to make this stuff. So they want to use it and sort of justify the great expense and research that it took to make these things. So all these countries are going to have huge, what are called standing armies, where men are professionally employed in the military. And so you have all these men, they're training for warfare, they're using these new technologies and weapons, they're ready to use them. So you kind of have to justify it. So it's like the American military now. We have a semi-big military, but they're standing around. Like, we have military men at bases that are training, they're ready for war in case that ever comes, and hopefully it never does, but they are kind of standing armies is what we call them. They're ready for war. So our military is not that big in terms of the types of militaries that are going to be developed in this time, but the growth of the military meant that the nations needed to use and justify all the expenses of paying for these new militaries, these cool weapons. Number six is social Darwinism. You probably heard of Darwinism in the biological realm of survival of the fittest. In the animal kingdom, the strongest survived, right? And then the weak, the poor, that kind of peter out and or get eaten, or they just go extinct. So that sort of biological idea is also now going to be applied to society. So there's going to be this idea of survival of the fittest, of the best societies are going to thrive and take over the weaker ones. And not only that, we're going to see sort of this era of racism also come in. And we talked about this in imperialism, is this idea that we need to civilize and sort of cultivate those cultures that are lesser down than Western civilization or Anglo-Saxon civilization, and help out the rest of the countries of the world. And so we'll take them and colonize them and try to bring them up into civilization. So a racist idea, but as we talked about in the imperialism unit, there's some positives and also a lot of negatives too with that. But that's going to rush us and help rush us into a world at war. And then lastly is just the glory. So Europe is going to be ready for war because it had been over 100 years. And so there's continually be this jealousy, this rivalry, especially in close quarters in Europe. And so since the Napoleonic Wars, after Napoleon basically swept through Europe and sort of changed the way that things happen in Europe, like people just kind of sat around and like, okay, that was utterly devastating. We're not going to fight a war, even though they still had animosities and aggression towards each other. And so war is going to be perceived as this game or festival event because no one's alive anymore to really testify to how bad war was. They can go back and read it, but there's no one really that fought against Napoleon or fought, for England because it had been 100 years. So no one's saying, hey, let's put the brakes on warfare. Let's ramp down our military or our expenditures. So there's no really check on leaders sort of getting very warmongering. Okay, and so what the immediate cause that's going to sort of spark this war? So the war with these 7 long-term causes have been building for decades, and these rivalries and alliances been building. But what really explodes this powder keg and leads the world into war is what happens in 1914 on June 28th. The Archduke, he's the prince of Austria-Hungary. So he's going to be taken over as leader of Austria-Hungary once his dad perishes, once his dad dies. His name is Archduke Franz Ferdinand. He ends up traveling to a hostile country to Austria-Hungary, and that's the country of Serbia. And so they weren't necessarily friends, but he's trying to go and meet and mingle, create some economic opportunities for Austria-Hungary and try to improve Serbia. So he's kind of welcome there, but there's going to be Serbian nationalists, and nationalists, again, are very proud of their country. They're proud of Serbia, for instance, and believe that they shouldn't be ruled or controlled by Austria-Hungary, for example. And so they see that this prince is coming, and they devise this plan to assassinate him. And it's kind of a sad and maybe half funny way in which that he was killed, because as he is driving, an assassin comes out and throws a grenade at him and misses his car that his wife is riding in and bounces and flops into his bodyguard's car and blows up that car. And so the bodyguard ends up going to the hospital. And so, but you'd think Archduke Franz Ferdinand would be like, no, I'm not going to go out. But he goes to his hotel and sort of refreshes himself and then makes his way to the hospital. And so that's where another assassin, Gavrilo Princip, pops out behind an alley. And this time it finishes the job and assassinates Archduke Franz Ferdinand on the spot. And so his death at the hands of a Serbian nationalist, someone that is very proud to be a Serbian, sort of sparks of conflict between Austria-Hungary and Serbia. So Austria-Hungary is like, I can't believe you'd kill our future ruler. And Serbia's like, we're sorry, it wasn't us. It wasn't our military. It was this crazy nationalist guy. All right, so it's not us, because Austria-Hungary is very big, powerful military. Serbia, not so much. So Serbia knows they're going to sort of get beaten up. And so they don't want a war. And so they say, hey, we'll give you millions of dollars. Just don't go to war with us, okay? Will that make you happy? And at first, Serbia or Austria-Hungary is thinking about it. So they finally, after a couple of months, you see this is July 25th. We go from June to July 25th, or really 1 month. So Serbia's like, okay, yeah, we'll take your monetary agreement. It won't replace the future leader of Austria-Hungary, but we'll take payment for his death. And also remember that we're going to come for you eventually. Well, Austria finally, well, not finally, but 3 days later, is just like, yep, money cannot suffice to bring back our future leader, the prince. So we're actually just going to come for you. And so they end up declaring war on Serbia. So it's just a small skirmish at this point. Austria-Hungary, Serbia, yeah, there's a war being fought that's going to be devastating for those two, but it's not affecting the rest of the world yet, until 2 days later, Russia, who's in an agreement in their alliance with Serbia, says, hey, Serbia can't fight alone. We're going to join them against you, Austria-Hungary, and we are going to now pound you up where you thought you were going to pound up Serbia. And so, but because Austria-Hungary also had their friends and their gang. So they call up Germany and they're like, hey, Germany, do you see what's happening? Russia's now at war with us. And we were at war with Serbia. So are you going to come to our defense? And of course, Germany, the most powerful military at this time, just as they will be in World War II, are just like, heck yeah, we have these great new technologies we've made, like mustard gas, where we can gas people, machine guns, where we could just gun people down. We're working on blimps and airplanes and all this great, strong battleships. No problem. We're going to have no problem. We're going to mop the floor with these guys. And so Germany, between August 1st and 3rd, declare war on Russia and France. So now this war is starting to get bigger. It's not just Russia and Serbia against Austria, Hungary, and Germany. But Germany goes and one-ups them and says, hey, we've had long-standing beef against France ever since Napoleon came through 100 years ago and even longer. So we're just going to declare war against you, France, as well. How about that? And so Germany ends up not just stopping there at talk and saying declaring war. By August 3rd, they start to invade Belgium, which was a neutral country, and then France. So they had to get through Belgium in order to get to France. And so really by August 3rd, the fighting actually starts. So by July 28th, Austria-Hungary was at war with Serbia. Just we have less than a week later, now we have 5-6 countries actually involved with direct conflict happening in Germany, Belgium, and France. So by August 4th, they've seen the Great Britain has seen Germany now marching into France. So England, being a friend of France, is going to declare war on Germany because they have since invaded France. So now this is where the real war is going to begin, and it's going to be long. It's going to be bloody. It's going to drag on forever. It's going to be a lot longer. The big thing here in 1914, everyone from every country was like, we'll be home by Christmas, Mom, don't worry. I'm going to go mop up these Germans in 3 months, and then I'll be home for Christmas. And then that never happened. And it's not going to happen for years. So we're not going to have, this is going to be a 4-year war. So for 4 years, sort of the war is going to drag on and kill not just hundreds of thousands, but millions of soldiers. And it's going to take a lot longer than anyone ever suspected. So that's why this war, this Great War is what was originally started. Its original nickname was, it's going to be the war to end all wars, because it's going to be so deadly, so costly, so expensive in many different areas that we can't have another war after this, because this is going to be the one that decides everything, which is what they thought when the war ended. But really what's going to happen is as World War I ends and that chapter closes, it's really going to open another chapter of resentment, of regret, of anger, and retribution, of countries still wanting to get even, especially Germany. And we'll talk about that at the end of this war. But really the ending of chapter 1, World War I, is going to open up the beginning of what we know as World War II, an even deadlier, more costlier, expensive war, which the world never thought would happen again. That's why we call it World War I now and World War II. So, but this war to end all wars was the first war fought in the industrial age, which is why we're going to see new technologies, new millions of people participating, just very costly. And it's also going to be the first war that involves both hemispheres at once. So the Eastern hemisphere of Europe, and there's going to be battles in Africa. There's going to be battles in Asia, India. And then also it used to be America and Latin America would stay separate. We were trying to stay separate. But now we are going to get drug into this war too. And so that's going to bring the Western hemisphere, North America, Canada, America, as in the United States, and even Central and South American countries into this war as well. Okay. And so I think that's where I'll stop today. And so when we continue, we'll talk about what's the United States response? How do we get involved? And again, we don't want to be in this war because it's just a European problem. It's how we originally look at it. But slowly we're going to be brought into this war. There's going to be 3 major events that catapult us into this war. And we'll get there eventually. So, but this is where I'll stop, and I'll just stop looking at this map. So this is the most famous region of the fighting. It's called the Western Front. Maybe you've heard of the book or the movie called All Quiet on the Western Front. This is where the movie 1917 centers, as where is War Horse. This is sort of the most glorified part of the war, even though it's pretty, like, no one really wants to remember the war because it wasn't there wasn't any glory involved. It was really gory instead. And so this is the Western Front, where the biggest battles of the war, including the Somme and Verdun, took place. And then you had the Eastern Front with Russia. Okay, and this is kind of a lesser known front. There's also a southern flank, and then the largest sea battle was the Battle of Gallipoli, which was down here in the Mediterranean. So it took place all over Europe and all over the world, but mostly sort of most of our literature and movies center on the Western Front. And that's kind of where America is going to get involved too, which is why we sort of remember this part and glorify that. So, okay, so thanks for your steadfast watching, taking notes. Have a good rest of your day, and look for part 2 coming next time I see you.